You will grow up and improve, and people around you won't. And that's okay. Just don't wait around to see the trash take itself out. Get busy. Be consistent. Very few people in life stick to something long enough to see if it works. Because when they hit their first roadblock, they quit and then they try something else. You can spend a whole lifetime in this cycle if you're not careful. You ever play with a magnifying glass when you're a kid with the sun and you focus the sun's energy to try to burn something? Think about that. The magnifying glass takes the sun's energy and focuses it to a point that it can burn a hole in just about anything. You got to use your mind like a magnifying glass. Choose what craft you want to get better at and stick to it. There's a old Russian proverb that says, the person who chases two rabbits doesn't catch either of them. And you got people out here like chasing 6 different rabbits. And if you want to use the rabbit analogy, focus on one thing until it's outpaced, within range, and in your clutches. And then acknowledge what you just did and celebrate the small win, because that's momentum towards the greater accomplishment or pursuit on the next one. Always remember too, like, after you get what you manifested, because you will get what you manifest, always ask for the discipline to keep it and the wisdom to multiply it. You know, through experience, you start to realize that being impatient kills more dreams than lack of skill or talent ever will. People have a lottery ticket mentality. They want things to happen overnight. But nothing that happens overnight is worthwhile. Accomplishment needs struggle. You got to turn into a professional. And in order to turn into a professional, you need dedication. Let me break down the difference between an amateur and a professional. Amateurs always address the symptom. Professionals get to the root of the problem. Amateurs think in absolutes, like, oh, this always happens, that always happens. But professionals think in probabilities. Amateurs think disagreements are threats, and professionals see them as an opportunity to learn something new. Amateurs have goals and professionals have processes, and oftentimes very elaborate and comprehensive processes. And the internet is like a double-edged sword, right? It's a blessing and a curse because you have infinite knowledge at your fingertips, and you also have infinite shiny things to distract you from achieving anything. But the digital world is going to widen the gap between 2 types of people. The people who know how to use it and the people who get used by it. You got to be able to protect your time aggressively. And in order to do that, you have to be a self-sufficient person who knows what to do with your time. If you crave validation and you're needy, it's going to be impossible to control your time. And if it's impossible to control your time, it's going to be impossible to improve. And so you should know other people's opinions of you doesn't matter. It shouldn't hold any weight. Unless those people are where you want to be. I'm not trying to be nihilistic when I say this, but the majority in society are just mental masturbators. They're innocent bystanders to all kinds of mindset manipulation and propaganda. And because of that, their expectations of you are going to be very little. If you come from a lower socioeconomic demographic, like a lot of us do, nobody expects greatness from you. So if you fail or become average, nobody's going to be surprised. They don't care. That's why you should never try to impress them. They don't want to be impressed. When I hear somebody say, like, nobody believes in me, that's the easiest excuse to be a loser. But ironically, it's also the easiest to use as fuel. To people who win, everything is a weapon. Any kind of emotion that they feel is going to be wielded in that type of way. The person in the mirror is the most important person that needs to believe in you. And it's not just about letting go of things that aren't serving you. It's about being resourceful with what's available to you in your environment. Make regular check-ins with yourself and ask yourself, what else can you sacrifice to your main goal and objective? Because it's important to you. Make little tiny sacrifices every day so that you can put more time into your main goal and objective. And some people, they might say they can't find their purpose, or they ask, how do I find my purpose? You find your purpose through self-exploration and expanding your potential in that regard. But You have to dive into the unexplored corners of your mind. Those corners of your mind that are beneath the ego and beneath the programming. People are looking for answers outside of themselves, and they're really not going to find the answer there. And in this day and time, there's too many people who don't realize what they have inside themselves. It was Bob Proctor who said, if you don't like the results you're getting, then there's something about yourself that you have to change. And if you're going to change something about yourself, you have to learn something about yourself. He found that most people don't even know who they are. If you ask somebody who they are, they'll give you their name. They'll say, I'm John Smith. But John and Smith are just two words that their parents gave them. That's not who they are. Or they might point at their body and say, this is me. This is me. But that's not them either. That's their body. Who are you? That's the most important question and the most interesting question that you're going to ask yourself while you roam this planet. And if you'll dive into that and you'll actually study yourself and try to find that answer to that question, then you'll find knowledge of self. And he also said, we live in 3 different planes of understanding. We have an intellect, we're spiritual beings, and we live in physical bodies. Because we don't know who we are, we're trapped in our physical bodies. And because of that, we let things in the outside world control us. 85% of the population is reacting to life, and they're not really living life at all. You have to let go of who you think you are to become who you really are. It's always on you, though. And this can be a liberating thought or it can be a scary thought. It's your choice. And when you gain more knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, you'll find that 85% of the population is living in a consensus state, which is basically a mentality. So these are your NPCs, non-player characters, and that's because they don't form independent thought. When they want to know what their opinions are on certain topics, they look to the external world. These kinds of people tend to get the most offended when you present certain views to them that go outside of their paradigm or their belief system. And that's because their beliefs represent unconscious security needs. You see, unconsciously they gain security from things like the mainstream media, the authorities, celebrities, the government. They don't really think for themselves, so they seek security in outsourcing their opinions to the outside world. And when you move away from this consensus state to the next state, which is an individuated state, it's often a traumatic process. Because instead of trusting the external world, the mainstream, the government, the authorities, and all that, you have to learn how to trust self for intuitive guidance instead. In order to do this, you have to decondition and undo a lot of the programming and a lot of the things that you thought were true about yourself and the world in that process. Now, this is a liberating but also a very lonely process by design, because in order to discover who you are, you have to let go of your attachment to the herd. And the important thing to keep in mind is you can't force people out of this state. It has to come from them realizing that there's something inside of them, something unique that can't be explained by the experts or the authorities and the government. And it really takes a certain maturity of the soul to even want to do that in the first place, because it's not easy. Most people will just refuse the call of their individuation again and again and again, repeatedly, because their desire to stay in the know of the consensus is so strong. You can't get angry or upset with these people for that. This is actually a necessary stage in their own soul's development. And this is why trying to wake up family, friends, and others is pretty much a failed endeavor every time you try. The best thing that you can do in this time, in times like this, is focus on your own soul's development. Then find something unique about yourself that you can bring back to the consensus as a gift that you bring back to the physical world. And the reason why is because it's the most individuated people who actually shift the next paradigm. But they don't do this by forcefully trying to wake up the people who are asleep. They do this by bringing back their true essence and their true nature and their soul's gifts back to the consensus, where they can uplift, inspire, motivate, and invigorate, and show people that there's actually a different way to be with more potential outside of the herd. So the modern mechanical world has done a really good job at extracting people's purposes right out of them and forcing them into a box of fear, pain, and struggle. Sometimes we need to lean on something that is greater than us. So basically, if we don't have something in our life that makes meaning, then we feel meaningless. I want to give something actionable. One of the exercises I've done before is thinking about what you enjoyed to do as a child. What was it that brought you intense joy? Where did you get lost in whatever it was that you were doing? Put yourself back into that place when you were a child. For me, I used to hit acorns with a piece of wood, and I would pretend I was in like a Major League Baseball game, hitting home runs continuously. But I would do this, or I would practice boxing if nobody was around. I would box with the tree branches, uppercuts, left hooks, all kinds of stuff. While I was doing this, it wasn't just about me pretending to be in a professional boxing match or a Major League Baseball game. My imagination was flowing with all kinds of things during me doing this. Take yourself back to when you were a child and you used to do things like this. Like I have memories of when I was like 5 years old. I think 4 years old was my earliest memory. Go back to that time because that's going to give you signs and signals as to what your true purpose is and what your strengths are as a human being. The next step is to embrace those strengths. Sit down with a pad and pen and ask yourself what you really want to do. How do you want to use your creativity to create your future? And then make a plan and stick to it. For example, you might want to design sneakers and you might want to come out with your own sneaker brand. It seems like a big dream, but you start by drawing out your sneakers. The next step is learning the materials. And there's 1,000 different steps. You don't do it all at once, but you be patient and you take your time. Every day you're chunking a little bit more and you're taking small steps towards the bigger goal up until you're figuring out how to market the sneaker brand. But you got to believe in yourself. So do that meditation, use a pad and pen, and plan your future. One day at a time, you get to the next level every single day. Until the next one, we'll see you again.